Howdy folks, this is going to be a little demo of UCCNC version of ProbeIt. This is going to be with regards to using it for doing surface scanning. If you've been around and used Mach 3, it would have been called like a point cloud or a bed of nails approach to get a surface of points. So just give you a quick view of the setup here so you'll be able to figure out what you're watching on the screen. I've got a touch probe set up here with a camera going along for the ride, just looking at the tip. And to give a sense of orientation, the x-axis is that away, the y-axis is that away, and the camera will be kind of looking at it with an ISO view. So ProbeIt it kind of does two separate things. 2D probing is a lot of your basic profile tracing and putting stuff into a DXF format, purely in the XY plane. There is 2D probing that does go, if you go into perimeter probing, you can do it in the XZ and the YZ planes as well, but it's primarily XY routines. And then there's also the surface grid probing section of ProbeIt, which does basically the bed of nails type stuff. You can select doing an XYZ 3D 3-axis type, or you can also roll in and use a rotary axis nowadays. That was added recently. For this demo, we're just going to focus on setting up and doing a 3D point cloud in XYZ. First thing we'll want to do is roughly set a location. Right now, I don't have X0, Y0 set up. So I'll just kind of arbitrarily position to a location, and I'm going to 0 X and Y, and I'm going to go ahead and 0 the Z surface. Just probe that down. So now we have X, Y, and Z set. You can see it retracted to Z is 0.52. So to set up a grid probing routine, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can just flat out set a XY grid with no sort of filtering or perimeter. So let's set X and Y to be 0, 0, and 4, 4 for the max. And let's just say, let's make a grid with no filter. And it's going to call up a window to save it. We'll just call it grid for now. And what you can see up here is we created 10,200 points, basically a roadmap of where to take the points. The point step over of the grid is controlled by this spacing step over value here. And you can scan in the X direction primarily, so it'll run back and forth in X and increment up in Y, or you can change it to scan in Y. You'll just have to recalculate the grid, close it, let's say delete it, create a new one called grid. It created the same number of points, but now it'll scan up and down in Y. So let's just see, I'm gonna just jog my probe tip up to the far upper right corner of the object, and I just want to see if I created a big enough grid, basically. So here you can see my tool is up higher. I probably need to make my grid a little bigger, so we'll make Y max 5.5. And let's create a new grid. So there you can see it created a new road map with 14,000 points now. So it's bounded between x0, y0 is the min, or the lower left corner, and x equals 4, y equals 5.5. So essentially, that's the quick, dirty way to do a bed of nails, just like what Mach 3 would have done, is create a grid. Again, you can say you don't want this many points. Say I want 0.1 increment. Make a new grid. Now it only created 2,300 points roughly. So you can see a lot less point density there. So again, the number of points, that's going to give you a good surface detail if you go up to a small step over. But again, that takes a lot of time. We put it to 0.02, make a new grid. You can see there we created 55,500 points almost. So a much higher density. That's going to take you over a half a day to probe roughly. So with that set up, you could enter all the settings here and set it on its way to probe. There are some ways to get rid of some time though. Why would we probe this whole square shaped grid if we only want to get the profile of this object? So what we can do, let's close this grid. We'll delete it. Now there's a couple of different ways you can make, I'll say, a perimeter to bound this object. So what I'm going to do first is the manual way is I'm just going to jog roughly around the perimeter, and I'm going to say save a point here. It recorded a point. And I'm going to save another point. And I'm going to save another point. Let's save one down here. And what I'm doing is roughly just jogging around the perimeter of the object, and it's going to be, all these points will be connected with straight lines. Create one more point. And I think the points aren't showing up because if I come in here to the settings for point cloud, I want to show the perimeter. And let me thicken up the line here a little bit. There. Put these settings away. So now you can see the perimeter points I've been recording. Let me just get a couple of more quick points. Save one up here. And I'll do one more. And then the last little chunk here, that'll get bridged if I do save it to a perimeter file. And here I'll call it Spartan. So there you can see it closed off this perimeter, and we have something that'll bound for the grid. So with our same settings here, we've got our grid defined as far as where to make it roughly as far as a full square envelope, but now we can say make a grid on the interior only. And so now we're only going to record 26,200 points instead of the 50,000. And we're going to get just the area of detail we want. Something else you can do, say you had an island, you wanted to get the detail around this shape, you could do an exterior grid. And there you can see 29,000 points to do the outside of that area. So this opens up the possibility for doing surface scanning and focusing in on just the detail you want. So it's basically the bed and nails approach. When you fire it off, it's going to, every one of these little grid points, it's going to do a Z probe down, lift up, move to the next one, probe down, and lift up and move to the next one. So that is the routine it's going to do, but now you've got the ability to filter out areas. So let's just go ahead as a demo. Let's close that. I don't think we want to do this one. Let's make the interior grid quick. And just to give a quick demonstration of how you set this up then, probe distance, again, we're sitting at roughly 0.52. We want it to go all the way down to the bottom. So we'll keep this at 0.52. Our safe Z height will be 0.5. A nominal retract to 25 thou. A minimum retract to 15. So what this routine will do is it'll try to lift up as small as possible without hitting again. And if it does hit something, it'll retract to roughly 25 thou. So it kind of looks at the slope of the surface and tries to do as small of a move as it can. And then the last thing we'll do here, we've got feed rates 30/30. Let's just go ahead and hit probe to grid and see what happens. So it's going to move to position where the first point defined in the grid is. So there you can see it's working on the bed and nails approach. It's just doing the grid points. And you can see green points are recorded where you collect the data. We'll make those points a little bigger. So the viewing window here, you got some good control over how you view it and what you see. So you can see every time it does wind up hitting something or thinks it takes a point, it does retract back. And you can see it's kind of doing a funky grid through here just because of the shape of the perimeter we defined. Now you can see we're starting to hit the object and actually get on the object. So now we're collecting Z height data instead of just being on the table surface. And I'm going to stop it here. So right there we've collected 200 points. It's got a long ways to go, but that just gives you an idea of how you get started with setting up, defining the grid area, the spacing step over, defining the density of the grid or the detail level, and then also how to use a perimeter, that is to define the outside. Now, one other thing you can do, let's say we wanted to do a really fine perimeter. Let's go ahead and close this perimeter file. Let's go ahead and close this grid. Let's go back to the 2D probing page and let's go ahead and close our point cloud too so we don't have to see that. So if we use the perimeter probing, we've got the option to both record a DXF and record a perimeter file down here. So let's go ahead and do that. We've already set our Z surface, our Z depth. We can set it to be 50 thou above the table, so I'll just tell it to move the probe down. And now the probe tip is just above the table. Now what we can do is, we've got a step over of 50 thou and a probe distance 0.2. If I click over here, I can tell it to probe towards X direction. Just to clarify, if I go up here just a little bit, this wheel, you can click all over to set the angle relative to the XY coordinate system. Let's go ahead and tell it to auto stop after a loop, and let's let it go. So now you can see up here, it's going to record a very finely detailed perimeter, unlike the one we set up by just moving around and roughly recording 10 points. So we'll let this go ahead and go all the way around this object. And this is probing in real time. I'll probably speed up the video here for a minute so we don't have to watch it go all the way around, but this gives you an idea of what the real-time speed is right now. All right, we're coming up on the end of making it all the way around the perimeter of our object. We got much better detail than what we can get by just manually taking a few spots. And you can see it says it completed a lap. So there we go. Let's go ahead and save this off. And let's call this one Spartan 2. And you can see it got rid of it when we hit save. The file's saved though. Let's go back to our surface grid probing page and let's just open a perimeter file. You can see here we saved Spartan 2 just a minute ago. Let's open that. And you can see it imported the fine detailed profile trace we just did. It closed up the open section. And now we can use this to make our interior grid. And so now there will be really no wasted time. When you do a bed of nails approach, you're going to get exactly within the perimeter of this object now. So let's go ahead and move our probe tip up. We have the same settings here. Just for the sake of showing a demo real quick, let's set this to 0.05. Make it a little coarser. So now we've got 3,000 points roughly. We've got the same settings here. Let's just tell it to start. that sent a message. I think it thought it finished. Let's try this again. So again, we told it to probe scan in the Y direction. So that's why with the shape of our profile, it's kind of skipping over some sections that don't fall within the bounds of the perimeter. And again, another thing I like doing, right now I have a small ball tip on. If I'm going to do the bed of nails type scanning of a surface like this, I've actually got probe tips where I sharpen the tip to almost a point. And I find those work much better for getting detail on objects like this rather than using a ball tip. But that should give you a rough idea again. So there's several options. You can go ahead and create a plain square grid. Just set your min x, y and your max x, y. Or you can create a perimeter by manually saving points, or you can go to the 2D probing page and do a true XY scan, save it off as a perimeter, and load it to get a finely detailed perimeter. So hope that helps clarify some of the mystery behind some of the settings and how you do a bed of nails type surface scan approach with ProbeIt for UCNC. Thanks for watching.